With Bend Stadium District now complete, BERTA begins preparing to overhaul its bus network to take full advantage of the new, centrally located bus station. The idea is simple. Redesign the route so that they all meet at this new facility, making transfers between buses seamless and efficient. However, just as BERTA is gearing up to implement this plan, Governor Timmons' office reaches out with a bold new vision for the region's transit system. The proposal? Restructure BERTA's network around a modern tram system. The trams would serve as the backbone of the transit system, with bus routes acting as feeders for less dense and outlying areas. It's the perfect project to showcase the governor's goals of improving public transit throughout the state. And the governor doesn't stop there. She pledges to secure full funding for the project, provided there is local interest. And with a deal like this, BERTA enthusiastically signs on and immediately begins planning for the new system. With local support locked in, the Superior DOT applies for a Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality or CMAQ grant to cover the capital costs. Federal CMAQ funds are distributed annually to states to use at their discretion for transportation projects that improve air quality. Clearly, an electric tram fits the bill perfectly. And to fund this particular project, Superior commits its entire CMAQ funding allocation for the year, along with the required 20% state matching funds to fully finance the project. By the time funding is authorized, BERTA has already completed its route planning, setting the stage for the construction of Bend's new tram system, which we will complete today. And be sure to stay tuned till the end of the episode, where we'll make a couple of fixes and name Bend's CFL team based on your feedback. And if you're excited about Bend's new tram system, hit the like button. And if you're excited about the bus restructuring, hit the like button for that too, and let me know what you're more excited about in the comments below. Or leave an emoji representing your New Year's resolution for the sake of engagement. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. The first thing you have to think about when building a tram system is where you're going to place your tram depot. This might seem like a detail, but it's actually really important. And that's because the tram depot placement is going to have an influence on both your capital costs up front and your long-term operational costs. Now, in general, the best location for a tram depot is going to be close to where your routes are going to be running. So that might mean that you think about building it in the downtown area. But that's not a great idea because the downtown is the most expensive area in your entire community. And if you use eminent domain to acquire properties, you're taking those properties off the tax roll, which means that it's twice as expensive. So that might make you think, you know what, I'll just put it way on the periphery. We'll put it over here by our bus station. That's not a great idea either. And that's because it's going to add a lot of deadhead or non-revenue service. So every time the tram tries to get to its route, you're going to be paying a driver to drive there, and that's not ideal. So that probably means that a location like this is going to be the best location that you can get. Fairly low density, close to your downtown, but not quite there. Thankfully, we already own property in this location, which means that it's basically free for us to acquire this property. All we have to do is scrape the site. So we are going to be leveling this bus station for our new tram depot, and we're going to try to make it fit. Now, in the real world, cities have architects on staff, and we would likely design a tram depot to fit this location, but it's a game, so we have an asset and we've got to make it work. And I happen to know that it's not going to fit here without a little bit of finagling. In addition to building this tram depot, I also want to build a new bus/tram station. And I want to build that right in the downtown area on this awkwardly shaped triangular parcel. A couple reasons I like this. First of all, there's just a bunch of single-family homes here, and that's not the highest and best use for this parcel. Second, it's right by all of our city-serving uses. So we've got our city hall, police station, and a fire department, and by having the station there, the city could provide free passes to all of its employees, which is something I think it would want to do. And finally, I think it's going to be centrally located within our entire system, meaning that it's going to be catalytic for development in this area, and we are going to be actually building a small development near this new station. But before we do all that, I think it's really important that we baseline our current system so we understand the trajectory of things after we revamp everything here in Bend. And it looks like we've got about 69,000 people using our service per month. Nice. First things first though, let's build our tram depot, and we have to relocate all of our bus routes before we do that. So I'm going to build one bus stop shelter, and we're going to take all the routes and move them right here. And now that we've done that, you can see that everyone is migrating away from this facility, which is perfect. So let's eliminate this facility and basically everything else on this site as well. You can see that we are hanging into the road. So I'm going to place this right about here, and then we'll figure out how to make things work on this road. I think the easiest way to handle this will likely be to use the custom 4-lane narrow road that we put together. Now we've got a bunch of stuff popping up, and there's an easy way to handle that. I'll just quickly add grass to the side of the road and remove it, and it'll get rid of all those trees. Now I've got to fix this roundabout, and there are two ways that I could handle this. I could obviously just place a smaller roundabout and hope for the best, but I think I'm going to remove this fence after placing a demonstration piece for myself. While I see it, I'm going to fix this road. We had a weird node issue that we were able to resolve. So now I'm just going to redraw the fences all the way through here. And now I'm going to clean up some of the decoration mess that we have here. And then add just a little bit of detail so that we can hide things like this little bit of imperfection that we have right here. And I think that this does the trick for us. It makes it feel like it's a custom facility, like it fits on the space well. Now, I know that I also am going to need to upgrade this because we're going to be designing 3 routes. We only get 10 vehicles to start out with. We're going to need the 15. So I'll place this right away. Now, next, I mentioned that I wanted to build a transfer center of sorts. So the first thing I want to do is dezone everything, and then we're going to completely scrape the site and level it. Now, you can already see that there's a little bit of grade change here, and that might not seem like that big of a deal, and in the real world, it wouldn't be, but in the game, it's going to be kind of catastrophic. So I'm going to do a little bit of Control H work to get this to be completely level. And now it's perfectly flat. So now I want to think about where our tram tracks are going to come in here. And I think they're going to be coming down Cooper Street right here. And then we're going to have a big circular movement through this entire area. So with that in mind, I'm going to place a small bus station right here. This is placing it not on Cooper Street, our arterial, but on a side street. Then I want to place a couple of station services on the side. We are going to back off our surfaces so that we have some separation with some landscaping or something like that. I also want to have a taxi stop right at this facility. And then we're going to have our tram tracks right next to this. Now for this, I'm going to go with parallel mode and decrease the offset to 0.05. I want to separate these just a little bit so that it feels like there's a little bit of space in between these tracks.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
That also leaves us with these 2 interesting parcels, which we are going to be using for development. And the goal is going to be to offset the cost of all this infrastructure by allowing a lot of density in these locations. Now I'm going to add some pedestrian streets through here so that as we build sites that perfectly fit this area, we're able to get the zoning to work. I've added tram tracks all the way around our little triangle so I could see how things lay out, but we are going to be changing those so we only have the movements that we need once we draw in our routes. But for now, I want to switch gears and think about what's going to go in this triangle parcel right here and this one right here. So first of all, let's remove all the trees. And then I think we're just going to search in our downtown area for a couple of buildings that we can pull over here. Now, I want these to feel substantial. And one of the things that I don't love about the vanilla buildings is that none of the buildings really have pedestals. So what I mean by that is a street level base that's maybe a little bit wider than the tower itself, something that's kind of common in the real world. So I think that this building right here could work really well as a pedestal, as could this one right here. So I'm going to grab this one and just place it right about here. And then we'll do the exact same thing for this building. And then I'm going to move these around so that they fit nicely within this site. Now this is a little bit closer to the sidewalk than I prefer. That's just about perfect. Now for this one, we might need to do something more substantial, and that might even include kind of pulling everything a little bit closer to our bus station. And there we go. I had a random thought as I was building this that maybe we just should face this building towards a pedestrian street, and then we could use this as some sort of plaza area. And I think that that is going to work out really well for us. So now I want to fulfill some of our other demand, and I think that we could see residential in this area because this would be a major draw for people that want to live next to this major transit hub. So I'm going to grab another building from this area, and I think that this one right here might work well with these facilities. It just kind of has a look that makes it feel like it's part of a bigger building. And all I've got to do is drop it in the middle like this and then recolor the buildings so that they look similar. And there we go. I grabbed that red color from the base building and I pasted it onto the blue color for the building in the middle, the tower. And I think that it ends up looking like one cohesive structure, which I really like. So we get some street presence at the bottom and a whole bunch of residential at the top. So I want to do the exact same thing for this building. And I think that residential is honestly the biggest need in this area. So we'll probably go with another residential building, but I don't want to use the exact same one. We have a whole bunch of nice assets over here. So I'm going to grab this. One of the reasons that I like this is it's not quite as tall, and I think that that makes sense for this location. And there we go. Nothing all that special about these buildings, but they do look like cohesive structures, which is what I was going for. So now I want to do a little bit more work in this area, including making sure that all of our pathing works. And then we're going to kind of decorate this up a little bit to make sure that it feels like the important area that it is. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at our invisible pedestrian paths, because as it stands, you wouldn't be able to move from this facility onto the pedestrian roads. And I believe that that little junction right there will do the trick. Now I bumped these surfaces back just a little bit so I could add a bit of landscaping and control things even more. Like right here, I want to have a path that's very well defined. And now I'm curious to know if we can fit a pocket park or two right here. And now we'll add just a little bit of landscaping around here to make it feel a little bit more complete. And there we go. So I went into a lot of detail here, but again, this is a really important site. And I think that these buildings right here are offsetting the cost of everything else that we've built. So we're going to give it the detail that it deserves. And with our transit facilities complete, let's move on to designing our tram system. Before we design our tram routes, I think it's important that we remind ourselves that the trams are supposed to be the backbone of all transit within Bend. So to that end, I want to cover as much of the community as we can, as many destinations and as many people as we can. Now, we can't cover everything. Some of it's not high enough density, and just reasonably, we've only got 15 tram vehicles. So I think that we could probably have 3 routes, 2 of which are bi-directional, all of which meet up at our new transit center. For our first route, I want to head up Copper Street, make a left down Main Street, a left down University, and then head right back to that transit center. For our second route, I want to have a route that basically loops around the other half of downtown before heading to our stadium district. And then for our final route, I want to basically ping back and forth between our transit center and the train station. Right here along, I believe this is Concord Street, and I'm really hoping that this is catalytic for development right here where all these single family homes are, as well as some of these lower density areas right here. I could see the property values kind of skyrocketing along the entire route. But the first thing that we have to do is make a connection between this road right here and University Avenue so our trams can leave this facility. And now we can add our first route, and this one should be fairly simple. All we're doing is adding track along Concord, Main, and University. But there are a couple of problems with this route. First and foremost, you can see that we've got this roundabout right here with landscaping right in the center of it, and our tram tracks are going right up and over the top of this. There are two solutions that we can employ here. So the solution that I think many of you would probably go with would be to add a very large roundabout right here. You'd end up with the ability to progress through here because this is paved. What I don't like about this is I can't add signals to this, and I think we'd have to have some sort of transit signal priority to make this work. So because we can't do that in the game at this point in time, I'm going to remove this and leave this as a signalized intersection. I think that that is the most logical treatment at this point in time. We're gonna do the exact same thing right here. We will remove this because I don't have transit signal priority. And now that is again signalized. Now, the big concern I have is right here. You can see that we're not even actually connecting all the way through here, and this is a very unsafe junction. So I think that we've got to basically rebuild everything right here, and hopefully that allows us to get rid of some of these lumpies and bumpies and jankies as well. So I'm going to get rid of all of these and kind of square this up, and I think we're going to make this maybe a little bit more extreme. I might actually get rid of Fireman's Park Street, get rid of this roundabout, and redo this portion of the road as well. And then I'm going to use the complex curve tool to make a junction right here. And that's much nicer. Now, one of the reasons I got rid of this road is I think that we're going to probably have an expanded medical center here in the future. And I could see as part of this project, since you're already mobilizing to build this section of road, removing this one as well, if that's something that the city planned on doing, which it does. And this is just a much nicer junction. This is a 90. It's signalized. You'd be able to have the tram progress through here first, assuming transit signal priority. And it's much, much, much safer. The one concern I have besides this lumpy right here is that we have a signal right here that wouldn't fly because the tram might get backed up and have its butt sticking out here in the intersection. So I'm just going to remove this one and then use the traffic tool to add a priority here. I want to have a stop sign on this local road because obviously they would never have priority here. Now I'm going to attempt to fix this. Seems like it did the trick. Yeah, it's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. I should be able to just link this back up and we'll move on from here. And for this next one, what I'm thinking is we're basically starting here, then we'll head down this road and we've got an issue right here. We've got to break the super node. Otherwise, we're going to have all sorts of issues getting around here. So what I'm going to do is just delete that chunk. Oh my goodness, and do a whole bunch of really, really bad things. So that was not my goal. My goal was to maintain 5th Street right here as 5th Street, and then have a nice, safe junction with Couillard. And then for this street right here, which I believe is Otter Lake, I might just junction into Couillard, and we'll back our park up just a little bit. So now I can upgrade this road right here, and I'm going to add a signal here. Actually, we won't add a signal. Instead, I will use traffic to add a stop sign here, which might seem strange, but I want to prioritize that movement right through here. And that's how we'll accomplish that. And then we're going to run this all the way down to Riverbend Boulevard. And here I've got to be really careful. You can see that we have these set to replace upgrades, and I'm concerned that if I do that, I'll start to lose some things. I've also got some custom roads here, and I don't know that they're all set up appropriately. You can actually see that some of these are not. So I'm going to use Road Builder to modify this segment of road, and all I have to do is switch these to allow tram tracks, and you can see that it's actually fixed all of these because I already added the trams here. I guess, except for this one right here, which is going to be a problem. I think I can easily fix this one though with Move It. And maybe easily wasn't the right word, but I was able to make it happen. So this will progress down to here, and then I want to cross over the bridge. We're gonna go past our low rent apartments all the way to our stadium area. Now, there are a couple of stops I want to make here. This is just, it's such an important destination. What I think we're going to do is have a stop right here, right by our community green. And then we're going to have a second stop right here. But we're only going to be able to stop there part of the time. And that's because these are one-way streets. That should do the trick for us, and we should be able to circulate all the way through here now. Now, on the way back, we're going to have to take a different route, or at least I want to take a different route. We're going to head straight down this street, which will go straight through the heart of our newly rebuilt downtown area. And that's how we'll get back to our transit center. Now for our final route, this one should be fairly simple. All we're gonna do is pop on down here and go all the way down until we get to our little transit center right here. Now this one is again not letting me do what I want to do, and I'm guessing I made a custom road right here. All I gotta do is switch this one to allow trams. And bluntly, I'm not sure why I didn't set it up that way in the first place. But with that, we've got all of our tram tracks in place, so let's add our stops. Now for these, I just want to make sure that we are separating these appropriately. And I'm thinking that 3 blocks is probably going to be good enough. Now this is going to be closer than I would hope, but this is such a major destination, we've got to have stops right here. And there we go. All of the stops are ready for Route 1. For Route 2, it's going to be very similar. Again, every 3 or so blocks. And then for our final route, this one is really more hoping for the future. There's not a lot on this route, so we're gonna add stops, but I'm gonna probably space these a bit further apart. And now we're finally ready for the main event, drawing our lines. So for this first one, it's gonna be fairly simple. We'll just go all the way around. I will make this blue. For our second route, this one's going to be a little bit more complicated, and we'll make this the red route. And then for our final route, I'll make this the white route, and this will just loop back and forth in between this facility and our new transfer facility. So now I need to take a look at all the routes that we just created and adjust the number of vehicles that we have on all of these lines. So Route 1 and 2 are the same route, and we can see that we've got 6 trams assigned there. Route 3 and 4 are the same, and we've got 9 there. And then Route 5 has no trams because there are none remaining. So I'm going to take Route 1 and drop this down to 2. We'll do the exact same thing with the route going in the opposite direction. For Route 3, I will again drop this down to 2. 4, for some reason, will not let me go lower than 3, which is a huge bummer, and makes me want to put 3 on the other route going in the opposite direction. And then for our circulator route, we're going to have 2 on there as well. Now, after adjusting our lines, we have 4 serving our first couplet, 6 serving our second couplet, and 2 serving our circulator going out to the train station for a total of 12 trams assigned. Now that's important because that means that we have 3 trams extra just in case we have any breakdowns. Always important to keep a little bit of slack, have a couple of trams stored at your depot. Now we will take a look at our final ridership numbers, but not before we adjust our bus lines. This next bit's going to be a little bit messy. We need to go through every single bus route in Bend and either assign it to this downtown transit center or our Stadium District Transit Center. In addition, I want to make sure that all the routes make sense, that they're not duplicating tram service, and that they're routing in a way that fits the new system layout. So to begin, we're just going to go through each and every route, and I can tell that some of these do not touch Bend, such as the airport shuttle, airport to university. But the black line, for instance, I know is a very important line that connects the university to Bend. So I'm going to isolate this, and then I'll use the focus mode to figure out exactly where this route is. I can see that this went directly into our station over here. Because this is over here, you might think just run it through the downtown, but I think it's actually going down the highway. So what we'll actually want to do is run this one right into our Stadium District station. And I'll place this right into our first bay. Now, for the rest of this, I'll have to remove a couple of waypoints. I know that I have a number of these. And after removing those, I think that our black line is exactly where it should be. Now, as I fix these routes, I want to make sure I'm adding BERTA to the name because that's how I'll know that I've adjusted the route. Next, we have our blue line, and I believe that this is the line that just goes out to Bailey. So for this one, we are going to run this through our downtown facility. So I'll just drag that one in here and make sure we don't have any waypoints, or potentially even add some because I want this to be a predictable route. I don't like that this is diving off and meandering up this road. What I think I'm going to have it do is go on University. And actually, I'll mulligan my own idea. University has the tram, and I do not want any conflicts there, so this should be a much cleaner route on the outside. Next, we have the Evergreen line, and this is an interesting one. It basically loops around our old bus station, hops onto University Avenue, goes onto the highway before diving off quickly to Briar Rose Street. From here, it crosses Main Street and then goes into this neighborhood behind the university. I don't think that this is a very useful route in its current configuration, and I think that the black line could actually do a little bit of what this is doing. So I think that we will completely eliminate this route. And then I want to return to the black line so that we can modify this to do a few things that Evergreen line was doing. In particular, I'm going to pull the bus off from the highway and go down this side street right here. And I don't think that this would be all that much slower, and now we're getting a bit more access on this bus line. I think that's a good change. Next, we have the magenta line, and I think that this one is an absolute mess. So you can see that this is going through this neighborhood that we created right here with the pond. It's going through this neighborhood that we just removed service from, but only a little bit. Then it heads down Main Street, does a whole bunch of wacky stuff through here, and it looks like it heads all the way back to our bus depot back here. I don't know that this route is going to make any sense unless we completely rethink it. So I'm going to begin to just remove a whole bunch of these waypoints. And I think that this stop right here will take and add to our bus station. And then this is going to do very little in the downtown area. I'm going to even remove these couple of stops, because the point of this is not to provide service in the downtown area. The point of this route is going to be to get people from this far-flung area to our downtown. So to that end, we'll circulate through this neighborhood. And I know that this route looks really crazy, but I think that this is what this neighborhood's going to need. I'm going to get rid of these old stops. Actually, I'll leave these because oftentimes these poles are left behind because it's more work than it's worth to remove them. And then I'm just making a couple of targeted improvements to make sure that this is as functional as it can be, and it looks like it's good. So the magenta route is complete. It's an ugly route, but it's going to provide a lot of service to East Bend. Next, we have the purple line, and this serves Remembrance Park, North Fork, and part of Uptown. Now, this route no longer makes sense because it was really kind of a short route that just grabbed people from this area and provided them a place to transfer. So I think to make this more useful, I'm going to try to run this straight down Main Street before connecting into our transfer center. So that means adding new bus stops right near Uptown. And I'm going to remove the stop that we have over here. And then I'll reuse some of these existing stops that we already have and run that straight into the heart of our transit center. Next, we have our red line, and this one duplicates a lot of existing service. In particular, it really duplicates what we're doing with our tram line. So I think that we're going to completely remove the red line. It doesn't really have a purpose anymore. Next, we have the white line, and this provides service to our business park, and it does a couple of interesting things. So it dives off here in Mineral Hills, goes through downtown Bend, and then blasts right through our transit center to where our old bus station is. So this should be a fairly simple one to fix. All we've got to do is remove a couple of these waypoints and feed this thing right into our downtown transit center. I think I'm going to remove these as well. I don't think they're all that important anymore. This is really more about transferring than anything else. And with that, we've fixed all of our BERTA lines, and I'm gonna let this run for a while before we do a little bit of system optimization. I've been staring at this for about 30 minutes, and I've got to say, this is incredibly broken, and it's all my fault. So a couple of things I've done wrong. I separated the lines right here thinking that this would provide some benefits, and all it's doing is really complicating things right here, leading to the despawning like we just saw. Another issue is that I have the trams overlapping the bus routes right here, which is creating all sorts of pandemonium. And then finally, I never reduced the cost of the tram, and considering the buses are free, it means that there are a ton of people using the buses instead of the trams. So first things first, I'm going to take care of the easy one. We're going to adjust the prices for all the trams down to $0. And now with that done, we've made our incredibly messy tram line incredibly desirable. So we've got to fix that. So the first thing I want to do to fix our line is to make sure that we have no trams using this little stretch of road right here. Now, I think that there are two ways that we can accomplish this. First, I think we need to bring our trams up past City Hall, and then we'll head over this way so that we're reusing this connection that we already have. This will allow us to remove all the trams from this street and from here, as well as here. Now, I will need to remove these stops right here, and I think I'll just place these right in front of City Hall. And that's moved our trams onto a more predictable route, but we still have some issues right here. So I'm going to remove all of the trams from this stop right here. And then I'm going to completely remove this route. I think that rather than having two separate lines, we just need to have one double track right here. So now there are a couple of issues. You can see that we still don't have that full movement right here. I will use the lane connector tool and I'll just reset it to vanilla, and it appears that that has provided us with all of our movements. So now that we have that, we should be able to add our routes right back to the street, so long as we provide a different parallel facility to Broad Street. But the reason I want to do that is, again, I don't want to have the trams going in front of the bus station. So I removed these two stops right here, added tracks right here and right here, and now you can see that this is a much cleaner movement and we are no longer going in front of our bus station. Now, I did eliminate two stops here, so I'll add those back. And now we're primed to start adding our stops straight through here again. Now, one thing I noticed is that by having the stops too close to the front, things weren't making any sense. So I'm going to place these right in the center. And then we'll have to go line by line to make sure that we aren't crossing and going in the wrong direction with these routes. And there, now we have no overlapping. The next thing I want to do is make this a dedicated transit facility. So I'm just going to use the replace tool to add a transit lane right there. And then we'll also remove all parking from this street. And with those couple of changes, things should be really efficient in this area. So now I once again want to let this run for a while to see where things shake out, to see if we need to modify the service at all. And after observing this for a while, I feel like we're in a pretty good place with our transit system. One thing that's very obvious to me is that that white line going back and forth between this area and the train station is incredibly important. It seems like that's the route that's getting the most utilization, and it's probably not actually the case. In fact, we could take a look. What I think is actually happening is because we only have half the capacity, every single tram is full, which honestly is a very good thing. Yeah, 61% utilization. Not better than Route 3, but we have Route 3 and 4 doing the same thing, so they are sharing the load a little bit, which is a good thing as well. So with our optimization complete, let's move on to some fixes based on your feedback. In the previous episode, we built this stadium district, and while it seemed like most people liked this, there were a couple of things that were universally brought up as issues with this build. First and foremost is the size of the stadium. This is something that both Shabby Chicken and Mark Rubin brought up. It's just way too small for a CFL stadium. Now, I'm not the type of person that wants to go ahead and build my own stadium. I'm not interested. But I do think that we could take this asset and attempt to elevate it, make it feel more grand. So to that end, I've added in the Control C mod because we're going to be adding seating all the way around the stadium. But before we do that, I've got to prep the stadium a bit. What I'm thinking we're going to do, first of all, I think it's pretty unreasonable and unrealistic that there's a whole bunch of homeless encampments here. So I'm going to remove all of those. And then I want to remove these end pieces right here because I'm going to go with another row of these flat benches, and then we'll go 3 levels up. We'll also add a couple levels of these middle pieces to try to make that feel larger as well. And then we'll add some seating right here in the end zone. So now I'm just going to use the picker to clone this. And And there we go. So now I have my row of seating. And the reason why I deleted that initial bench right up front is because I want to be able to copy this whole thing as one complete structure. And right now, I think it's a little bit too far back. So I'm going to move it forward just a little bit. And I think I can live with that little bit of overlap right there. So now I want to use Control-C to copy this. So I'll just click into the mod, hold down Shift, select all of these, Control-C. Now I have this here. It doesn't look like it preserved my heights, but I'll figure that out down the line. And the way that I'm going to figure this out is I'm just going to grab the middle pieces right here using Move It, and I'll Control-H these to the middle piece of the initial bench. So there we go. These are in line. This is a little bit too close to the action, so I'll need to bump these all back a little bit. And then I'm thinking that we might actually be able to copy both sides at once. And this is doing some things. It's definitely a little jank, but I think it'll be easy enough to fix. So I'll just plop these right here. And this time it just looks like it grabbed the heights completely differently than it did on the other side. Again, no big deal. Move It'll fix it. And those are looking pretty good. I just want to check out the front to see how bad the overlap is, and it's not good. So on this side, we might not be able to go up quite as high. So I think I'll just get rid of a little bit of the seating there so the overlap's not quite as extreme. And then we're going to have to do a little bit of custom lighting as well, because you can see that we have a little bit of overlap. Or actually, we'll use the lighting as a way to center this and forgive a little bit of imperfection right over here. Now I want to bolster up the center, kind of the box seats. So for this, I'm going to see if I can actually clone this using Control-C. I can just select these, Control-C, and I want to be really careful with this. If I go too close, I'll overlap all the seating in the bottom. That might be the trick right there. That might be okay. I'll do the exact same thing on this side. And then I'm going to use Move It to do the fine grain moving of these. Now, I'd love to have some end zone seating, but I'm not exactly sure how much I can get away with. I'm going to use Control-C to attempt to clone just a couple of these. And that's looking pretty good, so I'm going to paste this on the other side as well. And then I'll better bulldoze some of these fences out of the way. Ideally, I'd just take away this fence and this one. I don't know if that's going to actually work, so we'll just need to keep an eye on that. And now with those gone, I can just make sure that we're totally centered. Now, unfortunately, I had to remove all of the fences in the stadium. Main reason for that is those two pieces were coming back anytime I touch anything in the stadium. So that apparently is why you don't delete a single portion of an asset. That said, we will add a new fence all the way around here once we finish up. But before we do that, we've got to recolor the stadium. And we didn't have a name for the team until Melissa Harris gave us a wonderful suggestion. She suggests that we name the team the Bend Bandits, with the mascot being a raccoon, which I absolutely love. She also suggested a name for the entire district of Orchard Grove, which I think is a nice way to pay homage to what was here before. So I'm going to do that. And then we're going to recolor our stadium seating. And I don't have a logo for the team just yet, but if you come up with one, I will happily incorporate it into the build. But because I don't have one, I think I'm just going to go with colors that I think would represent the team well. And I think black and white would do well. So I'm going to go into recolor these. And I'll grab a portion of the seating and make it black like this. And then I'll clone this one and paste it. Then I'm going to grab this white bench and paste that on the rest. And that's already looking better in my opinion. Now, one thing I would love to do is get rid of the chirpers on the stadium. And this would be an excellent opportunity to actually have a decal that covers the entire stadium. Right now, I don't really have one that's going to work perfectly. What I do have, though, is actually a vanilla asset that's going to work okay. We have this multi-purpose sports field, which is actually a part of this multi-purpose sports field that came with the smaller high school. So I'm going to place this on the field. And one thing you're going to realize is that measurements are relative. So even though we're looking at yards here, it's different. It's not the same. So as I place this right here, it appears that it's going to be about 10 yards shorter than the chirper field. So this is not ideal, but we're going to live with a bit of imperfection. Now, this is clearly not perfect, but I do think it's an improvement, and I think it shows us a step that we could take to make this even better. I think I'd love to create a decal for the stadium. I've never done that before, but I might do that in the near future so that we could actually have a proper CFL stadium. From my understanding, CFL stadiums are 10 yards longer than NFL stadiums, so we'd have 250-yard lines, which we obviously can't do with the decals that we have available to us. Now, I also want to name the stadium, but I feel like we have to have a sponsor, and I think we have a great one. So we'll make this Johnson Aggregate Stadium featuring the Bend Bandits. So you might wonder why we're doing that. And basically, it's a comment that we had from I Am Jashing You, who thought that we should have some sort of stadium district welcome sign. And I gave that some thought. Most stadiums have some sort of major sponsor, and we are going to be no different. So I've got to create a sign, and for that, I will search for screen. And the reason I'm looking for screen is we get all of these signs that we should be able to boost up, such as this one right here. I will just place this kind of in the corner and then use Move It to boost this thing into the air. And the nice thing about this particular sign is that we'll still have the base and it'll just get taller and taller and taller. Now I'm going to search for poster, and I think I could go for one of these huge poster signs, although I need to check to see how big my Johnson Aggregates sign actually is. Maybe not quite as big as I was thinking, so I will go with something a little bit smaller. And I'll go with this large poster. And I chose this one because it's already black, so I should be able to cover this up fairly simply. And then I'm going to also paste this on the other side. Now this side's good, this side is way not good, but easy enough to fix. So now I should be able to take that large Johnson Aggregate sign and decal right over the top of it like that. That looks pretty okay. And there we go. That's not perfect. Obviously, I'm not using these decals the way that they were intended, nor am I doing something that's incredibly elaborate, but it conveys the message. This is Johnson Aggregate Stadium. So I also, knowing that we don't have a mascot for our team, I think I'm just going to place this near the goal line. Actually, rather than the goal line, I'll place it in the back. Just like that. And then while we're over here, I wanted to make a couple of small tweaks, things that are problematic from today's build. In particular, we know that I wasn't placing the tram stops very well, so I'm going to move these to be directly across from one another. And then this one right here is way too close to the road. That'll lead to some conflicts with that intersection, so we'll just back this up. And then finally, I just want to look at the stadium. Yeah, that's also too close to that turn. So I'll move this to right about there. And then the other issue I noticed is right here. This is pretty problematic in terms of the alignment here. And I think we could use Move It just to clean this up a little bit. There, that is significantly better. This is brand new. There's no way there'd be that offset in a brand new project. And with our fixes complete, let's do a little bit of landscaping and detailing. I'm guessing that some of you might be surprised that we're doing landscaping and detailing, considering we did a lot of it while we were building, but I think that there's more that we have to do. First and foremost, over here, you can see that we left a bunch of old landscaping behind. I feel like we've got to clean this up and maybe address some of the areas directly adjacent as well, considering they're kind of jank as well. Then I want to take a look at University and add a bit of density along here. I know that might not seem like landscaping and detailing, but that's what I want to do to detail this area, is add a few more buildings. And to me, that makes sense considering when you add this kind of transit here, you'd expect that there would be buildings fronting the street. It doesn't make sense to have that much transit access without buildings and people. And then finally, I want to take a look at all these tram stops and make sure that they make sense. So right here, you can see that there's just a number of traffic signals right in a row, a number of crosswalks, and then a gigantic tram stop. We're going to fix that by really looking at each one of these along, in particular, Main Street and University. And then we'll try to add some amenities to make it feel a bit more thought out and well planned. As I was landscaping and detailing, I realized that there were some more changes that I had to make to the build. First and foremost, I noticed that there was some duplicative track here on Concord and Couillard streets. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense to have tracks going side by side, serving one route each. So I decided to remove the track on Concord Street, shift the white line down to Couillard, and add a little bit of track here on Belmont for a net reduction in overall track in the street. That's a big win. Second, I realized that there were a number of places where we just had a ton of crossings and some signals that just didn't make a lot of sense. So through here in particular, I removed a ton of crossings and a ton of traffic signals. And I think it just makes things more predictable and it makes it look better as well. And then finally, over by our stadium, I realized I forgot to add the fencing. So I went ahead and did that. And honestly, it makes it look a ton more complete. And with our landscaping and detailing complete, there's only one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Before we wrap things up, I have a few observations. First and foremost, you can see that our transit utilization has jumped considerably. We've actually added about 7,000 trips, which is wild. Most of those trips are on trams, which is good because that means that we actually accomplished our goal of making the tram the backbone of our system. Another observation is that even though we only added a few residential buildings throughout this entire build, our population has grown by over 3,000, which in my opinion demonstrates the power of transit. But without a doubt, I think the most interesting thing that's happened this episode are the changes that we've had to land value. You can see that before we added the trams, the average overall land value was $22,000 per cell. Here's a couple land values for different neighborhoods in the downtown Bend area. And you can see that on the balance, we're seeing that the highest land values are not in downtown, but across the river by the Stadium District and Sunrise Dale, which I think is pretty interesting. And contrast that to what we're seeing now. Our average land value has jumped up to over $28,000 per cell, a 31% increase in overall value. But I think more interesting is what's happening at the neighborhood level. What we're seeing is that downtown is now the most valuable neighborhood in the city, which is kind of what you'd expect to see, and that's because of trams. In fact, downtown's land value has jumped up by 133%. But that wasn't even the neighborhood that saw the most significant growth. That's Canterbury. That's that neighborhood where we have our tram going all the way down that arterial. The land value there has increased by 147%. And that same pattern repeats itself everywhere. Every neighborhood that has the tram is more valuable, and neighborhoods that didn't get the tram, while they increased in value, aren't nearly as valuable as the neighborhoods that have direct access to trams. And that's why you'll often see planners and economic development professionals together championing trams. They're good not just from a planning standpoint, but also from an economic development standpoint. And ultimately, I think that this means a couple of things for our city. Number one, I think it means it's time to start growing up. But before we grow up, I think we're going to start sprawling out considerably. That's probably something that we'll cover in the very near future. But I think for today, we're going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things that you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me and play some city skylines too. I also want to thank everyone that provided feedback about the previous build. Your feedback makes all these builds so much better, and I really appreciate it. So if you ever have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below. I really appreciate them. And even if I'm not leaving a heart, I read most of the comments. So thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.